When the alarm rings in the morning, you usually do one of two things. You either wake up or you hit snooze and say 5 more minutes, which is probably the biggest lie humans tell themselves before sunrise. And honestly, it's weird when you think about it. Every single morning, millions of people wake up because a tiny machine screams at them, not because their body is ready, not because they're fully rested, just because society decided 7 a.m. means consciousness. But humans have existed for around 300,000 years, and alarm clocks have existed for only a tiny fraction of that time. So, how did humans wake up before alarms? And I don't mean medieval kings or Victorian England, I mean ancient humans, hunter gatherers, the first civilizations. People who lived and died without ever hearing a ringtone because somehow they still woke up on time. And the answer tells us something really uncomfortable about modern life. A few years ago, sleep researcher Jerome Siegel studied hunter-gatherer tribes like the Hadza in Tanzania and the San people in Namibia. These are groups whose lifestyles still resemble how humans lived for thousands of years. And what he found was fascinating. They almost never slept the way modern people do. There wasn't this perfect 8-hour block of uninterrupted sleep in a silent room. People woke up during the night constantly. Someone checked the fire, someone heard animals nearby, someone got up and moved around. In fact, across the entire night, there were barely any moments where everybody was asleep at the same time. Humans evolved sleeping socially, not individually, which already sounds completely different from modern life. Today, most people sleep alone in dark rooms that are quieter than caves probably ever were. Ancient humans slept surrounded by sound, fire cracking, people breathing, dogs moving around, wind, insects, and slowly, naturally, the environment itself would wake them up. Not instantly, gradually. First, the temperature changes, then birds start making noise before sunrise. Light slowly reaches your eyes, other people begin moving around, and eventually your brain starts waking up on its own, which is exactly what the human body evolved to do. Your brain actually has an internal clock called a circadian rhythm, and according to neuroscientist Andrew Huberman, one of the biggest controls for that clock is light entering your eyes in the morning. That sunlight tells your brain to stop producing melatonin, raise body temperature, increase alertness, and wake up. In other words, for most of human history, the sun was the alarm clock. And honestly, it worked pretty well, because ancient darkness was completely different from modern darkness. Not my room is kind of dark. I mean real darkness, no streetlights, no LED signs, no glowing phone screens at 2 a.m. After sunset, humans couldn't do much safely anyway, which meant people naturally slept earlier and woke closer to sunrise. Not because they had insane discipline, but because biology and survival pushed them in that direction. But then humans invented something that completely changed sleep forever. Schedules around 10,000 years ago. Agriculture started changing civilization. And farming sounds peaceful when you read about it in history books, but farming actually introduced something humans had rarely experienced before. Strict timing, crops had to be planted at specific seasons, animals needed feeding early, water had to be carried. Work slowly stopped depending on how people felt and started depending on the clock. For the first time in history, humans increasingly needed to wake up even when their bodies weren't ready. But even then, alarm clocks barely existed, so civilizations invented other ways to wake people up in ancient Greece. People used water clocks called klepsydrus. Some of them could whistle using steam pressure once the water reached a certain level, which means ancient humans basically invented a primitive alarm clock using physics and boiling water. The Romans had human alarm systems too. Wealthy Romans often relied on servants whose literal job was waking people up. Imagine that being your full-time career. And later in medieval Europe, church bells became society's giant public alarm clock. Entire towns organized their lives around bells, wake up, pray, work, sleep. Before personal alarms existed, humans synchronized themselves with communities. You didn't wake up alone. You woke up with everyone else. And honestly, humans still aren't fully adapted to modern sleep. One of the strangest discoveries about historical sleep came from historian Roger Ekirch. While studying old court records and diaries, he noticed people constantly mentioning something called first sleep and second sleep. At first, he ignored it, but then he realized people across Europe kept describing the exact same pattern. Humans used to sleep in two separate phases. People would sleep for a few hours, wake up naturally around midnight, stay awake for a while, then go back to sleep again. And during that awake period, people talked quietly, prayed, reflected, or simply sat near the fire thinking. Today, if you wake up at 3 a.m., you immediately think, great, My sleep schedule is ruined. But for most of history, that was completely normal. Artificial lighting changed that. Once humans filled nights with candles, lamps, and eventually electricity, people started sleeping later and later. Eventually, the two-phase sleep pattern disappeared, and then came the Industrial Revolution. This is where human sleep truly changed forever. Factories didn't care about sunrise, they didn't care about seasons, and they definitely didn't care whether workers were biologically ready to wake up. Factories cared about productivity. The machine starts at 6 a.m., so you start at 6 a.m. Simple. For the first time in history, millions of humans were forced into unnatural schedules every single day. And suddenly, alarm clocks became necessary. By the late 1800s, mechanical alarm clocks started appearing inside ordinary homes. And ever since then, humans have started mornings the exact same way, being violently dragged out of sleep by sound. Think about how unnatural that actually is. Your ancestors woke up to sunlight, birds, voices, fire, and gradual changes in temperature and light. You wake up because your phone plays the digital equivalent of a panic attack. And modern sleep research shows this matters more than people think. Scientists studying sleep inertia discovered that abrupt awakenings can temporarily affect mood, memory, alertness, and reaction time, which explains why your brain feels like wet cement for the first 30 minutes after waking up. And maybe the strangest part in all of this is that modern humans treat exhaustion like a personality trait. People brag about sleeping 4 hours, being tired all the time became normal, but biologically, humans were never designed for midnight scrolling, constant artificial light, and alarms screaming at sunrise. For most of human history, humans followed sunlight, weather, seasons, and fatigue. Now we follow notifications, deadlines, meetings, and calendar reminders. Your ancestors didn't wake up checking emails, they didn't start the day already anxious. They woke up with the environment around them, slowly, naturally. Together, then humans invented schedules, then factories, then alarm clocks. And ever since then, humans have been waking up against their own biology.